Chelsea have parted way with Thomas Tuchel. So Thomas Tuchel is no longer the Chelsea manager. We're going to be bringing you a statement from Chelsea Football Club any moment now. They have just announced this huge news after that shock defeat in the Champions League. But how shocking is this?
Well, take back what I just said. Yeah. Clearly, he's not going to get any more time to make that work. I mean, this is Abramovich-esque, isn't it? You know how things would go on. You've just allowed all these players to come into the football club. New regime. He's a good manager. I just wonder. You know, he had the Scott Parker situation where he criticised the owners, the transfer policy, the players a little bit. He's done that once or twice already this season. Clearly, Todd Bowley has thought, right, enough's enough. We need somebody else in. But I guess who comes in next? The name that obviously immediately springs to mind is Mauricio Pochettino. Ah, there you go. We'll tell you what, we'll talk about who could potentially be taking over, but let's just talk about the man that is leaving Chelsea Football Club. If you're just joining us, you can see there Chelsea have sacked Thomas Tuchel. It was a very short tweet saying Chelsea Football Club have announced that they have parted ways with the manager. There's a short statement online as well. In the last couple of minutes, they've said, on behalf of everyone at Chelsea Football Club, the club would like to place on record its gratitude to Thomas and his staff for all their efforts during their time with the club. Thomas will rightly have a place in Chelsea's history after winning the Champions League, the Super Cup and Club World Cup in his time here. He said, as the new ownership group reaches 100 days since taking over the club and as it continues its hard work to take the club forward, the new owners believe it is the right time to make this transition. They say Chelsea's coaching staff will take charge of the team for training and the preparation of our upcoming matches as the club moves swiftly to appoint a new head coach. There will be no further comment until a new head coach appointment is made. Do you think there were signs, because a bit of an indication from some of the comments that he made himself, didn't he, after the game, about not quite knowing himself what was going wrong? And it's not the first time he's said similar sort of comments so far this season. You know, he's taken responsibility for the games, but he said, you know, we can't play like this. We're not aggressive enough. We're not high tempo. We haven't worked hard enough. Performances aren't good enough. Clearly, I think we could all see that something wasn't quite right. But like I just said before the news broke, I think we all assumed that was a little bit of a hangover from last season and what had happened, and happened obviously with the ownership of the football club. Signings then coming in, Todd Bowley taking the reins as not only owner, but chief exec, chief scout, chief of recruitment, chief of everything, effectively. That hasn't gone as smoothly as maybe some thought it should do this season. I thought he would be given a little bit more time, but clearly they've decided to make a change very, very quickly, which is a huge shock, is a huge surprise. But I guess now it's who comes in next and how quickly can they get that person in.
And they're going to have to deal with all the decisions that, the decisions that we think that Tuchel did make in bringing in his own players.
Yeah, Thomas Tuchel must have been involved because Todd Bowley's he's not a football man. No. Very, very good businessman, very good sports operator, but not in football. So there must have been huge discussions from Thomas Tuchel about what players he wanted and had the final say. And now it's down to somebody else to come in last minute, pick up the pieces and try and put it all together, and that's not going to be easy either.
One of the things that he did say after the game was, you know, he criticised this lack of hunger and intensity, but surely that comes from the manager, doesn't it?
Of course it does. I think, you know, you see that. You look at, and we'll talk about them later, Antonio Conte's teams. You know, they are about working hard, desire, and that's what fans want to see. Fans will always accept mistakes. They will always accept technical deficiencies, but they won't accept lack of hard work and lack of desire. And when a manager starts to question that, you start thinking, well, are the players playing for the manager? Maybe they weren't in this instance. Maybe there's something else that's gone on that we don't know about that may come out sooner rather than later. We find out a little bit more. But yeah, really surprised to hear that news this morning.
Almost sort of slightly cutthroat, isn't it? Just in the manner that they've done it straight away off the back of this.
And there's no messing about there, is there? It's like they've looked at the Champions League result last night, obviously listened to his comments, a little bit like with Scott Parker, and just gone, right, that's it, you're out. And they clearly haven't got anybody in mind as yet to appoint, but I would expect an appointment within a week at least.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be a lengthy list of managers currently out of work who would love to take on that.
There's probably some in work as well, probably like that, rubbing their hands together, thinking, oh, I wouldn't mind that job.
I mean, do you not think that just with new players coming in, big players leaving, start of a new season, it's been this transition period with new owners, you just needed a bit more time to gel?
I think when you lose, because of what happened with the ownership and the sanctions, obviously, on Abramovich and Chelsea couldn't re-sign players, you lose incredibly influential players, within that. You lose, obviously, Rudiger, who's a huge part of that, not just as a player, character. You bring in new players that have to get used to living in a new country, new cities, new teammates. Deadline day, they signed Aubameyang. That's a Thomas Tuchel signing. That's not a cheap signing. Somebody else comes in, might not fancy Aubameyang, because of what's happened in the past and the last few years, maybe with his attitude, etc. So that's clearly there are a lot of signings that were down to Thomas Tuchel, and he had a huge influence on those signings. But a lot of those have not really been in the building for more than 2 or 3 weeks. You would think he would have got at least until the next international window, another 4 or 5 games to try and get some performances. Because as I said, they've not been playing well, but they're not a million miles away, from the top 4 at the moment. You can lose your first Champions League game. You can bounce back from that. It shouldn't be a huge problem. So to make this decision this morning, is a massive surprise. It's great for us, but...
Yeah, is it more of a surprise because this is, as you kind of said before, you would expect this under Roman Abramovich, but maybe something we weren't expecting under the new owners, but they seem to have just been continuing this manner.
You're right, Haley. Had this been under Abramovich, I think we'd have all been saying he's under pressure, he's under pressure, he's under pressure. But when you've been listening to what's coming out of Chelsea, what's coming out from most people in the media and that work in and around football, everybody thinking he will get a bit more time. He's got credit in the bank, obviously with all the transition, all the issues that we've talked about, he'll be okay for a little bit longer. But clearly they've just gone, no, enough's enough, out. And that makes me think whether there's been discussions, at a higher level, between Thomas Tuchel and the ownership group and Todd Bowley. Something's not right, something's not quite happening. And they've just said, right, okay, that's it, enough, off you go. Again, they brought in young players, but, Fofana's only just come in. You've got to expect, if he's going to form a partnership with Koulibaly, that's going to take time. That's not going to happen, in the first 90 minutes of a training session and get thrown straight in. Raheem Sterling's a good signing. You expect him to start performing at some stage. They brought a lot of players in. Aubameyang will score goals if you give him chances. That shouldn't be a problem.
You just wonder if a new manager will give the same chances to some of these players, and how much of a worry would you be if you were one of these, knowing that you were a Thomas Tuchel signing and he had a plan for you? But
I don't think Aubameyang's too bothered, if I'm honest. No. I think he won that. He's turned up. He's got his move. But yeah, I think now. But what options does he have? Yeah. He doesn't have a fantastic midfield. He can't make too many changes in that area. As I said, those players are now there until at least January. A new manager coming in, if he's going to tweak personnel, change the system, try and change training, that's going to take at least a month or so to implement. And then all of a sudden, you're then only 2 or 3 weeks away from a break, obviously going into the World Cup. So, yeah, not good times for Chelsea.
If you're someone like Raheem Sterling and you've maybe had these chats with Thomas Tuchel and possibly been given assurances about when you're going to play, how things are going to work, that he has a plan for you, and then starting to worry about when a new manager comes in, what his idea is going to be.
I think the likes of Sterling will be okay because we know that his work rate is exceptional. We know that he's got quality, and he's faced many sort of adversities so far, through his career and through his life. Players like that will be okay. I think it'll be those players on the fringes, like Aubameyang, that was brought in, Cucurella perhaps. You've now got a direct fight between Chilwell and Cucurella. He was obviously brought in, probably told he was going to play most of the time. A new manager might come in and might decide otherwise within that. But it looks like it could be an incredibly expensive, not just window for Chelsea, but an incredibly expensive sacking. Because surely a new manager coming in is going to want more money in January to start developing his own players. And if it doesn't work immediately within the first 5 or 6 games, and suddenly Chelsea find themselves in 6th or 7th position come the World Cup break, then what do? Do they sack another manager? And do they try and rebuild again? The whole point of not having a chief exec or a sporting director really, I don't think has helped Chelsea in any way, shape or form throughout this whole process.
We understand that Chelsea are going to be speaking to Graham Potter a little bit later on. Mauricio Pochettino is also up there. He is one of the favourites, but they're looking to seek permission from Brighton to speak to Potter. Zinedine Zidane as well. His odds are quite short on this. You throw a Brendan Rodgers' name into this too, but we believe Zidane, Potter and Pochettino, the names at the top of Chelsea's list. What do you think about that?
Well, I think when you look at Zidane and Pochettino, they're both out of work, and they've been, Pochettino knows the English game. Zidane's been a serial winner, whether it's been a player as a manager. So, both of them would tick the boxes. But for me, I think you've got to look at Graham Potter and what he has done at Brighton. I mean, it's extraordinary. I think that, when you look at the big clubs that have been looking for managers, Manchester United, I think, missed a trick with them. But there's no doubt that Graham Potter is high on, or will be high on, any big club who lose their manager. Because when you look at the jobs that the manager does in terms of results, but you've also got to look at the development of players and the way that the team plays that has evolved at Brighton. That the money they have brought in from the sale of the players that they've had, the way the team's playing. I watched them at the weekend; they were outstanding. Totally dominated Leicester, especially in that second half. I thought they were excellent, and all of that is down to the manager and the work that he obviously puts in the training ground. And I would not be surprised if he is the one that Chelsea go for. Obviously, new owners at Chelsea, and they want to make a stance right away and say this is who we feel as if we can build for the future with. There's one thing about Chelsea; they have recruited younger type. So you'd think Graham Potter would be, for me anyway, the outstanding candidate. But I'm sure Brighton won't want to lose him because the job he's done is unbelievable.